Buenos días, estamos en el CEO Summit 2014 de Semana Económica y esta mañana vamos a entrevistar a Sir Terry Leahy, quien fue el CEO de la cadena de supermercados británica Tesco. Durante su gestión del 97 al 2011, esa cadena se expandió a numerosos países en Europa, en Estados Unidos y creció de una manera muy acelerada. Great. So tell me about the state you found Tesco in and what your first actions were to embark on this overhaul, which you did in 1997.
Well, it goes back a little earlier to when I joined the board of Tesco as the first ever marketing director in 1992, and it was a recession then in the West, and Tesco was a distant number 3 in the UK market, and it had two very formidable competitors at the time. Marks and Spencer were the world's most profitable retailer. It was a year or two later Walmart overtook them, and Sainsbury was the world's most profitable food retailer. So these were icons not just of retail but of British business. And Tesco was a third of the size in market capitalization of these companies. And the gap was probably opening up, so we had struggled a little bit in recession. Some of our customers were more indebted and more affected by big rise in interest rates at that time. So it was a difficult situation. The business wasn't growing. And we were under competitive pressure from above, from these very strong brands, but also from below, new entrants from Germany, limited range discounters like Aldi and Lidl, and they were coming in and predicted to take a big market share of the market, 25%. So pressure all round. I didn't really know what to do. I was a young appointment to the board. I felt all the responsibility on my shoulders. So actually I went back to business school where I'd been and sort of remembered the rules of marketing, and I started just by talking to customers. And I listened and listened and listened. And actually I was reassured, because whilst city investment analysts and industry experts said that this was a structural problem that Tesco couldn't get out of, this squeeze from above and below and this underperformance, actually the customers were much more encouraging. They said, we like your business, there's some ways you've let us down, but if you can do these things for us, we'll like you a little bit more. And so then I learned a big lesson, which was about listening to customers, following customers. Don't worry, respect competition, but don't worry about them. Respect pundits, but don't listen too much to them. Just follow your customers. And if you listen enough, they'll give you the strategy for growth. As a result, we changed some things. And in the following 20 years, Tesco, in an economy that only grows at 2% a year, grew at 10% every year for 20 years. We were a third of the size.
What period of?
This is from 92 to 2010. We were a third of the size of Marks and Sainsbury. We ended up being 6 times larger. So in an industry, an old industry with common operating costs, very transparent, we grew our value 10 times faster than 2 good companies, actually. These were not bad companies. And that difference, that huge difference, really was about using data to understand about customers and then changing the business in response to that.
Tell me a little bit more about that. How much of your energy and budget and processes were invested in getting data from customers and understanding your customer?
Quite a lot. So as I travel around the world after Tesco, actually a thing called Clubcard is more famous than Tesco. because it was probably the world's first example of the use of what is today called big data. And we launched Clubcard in 1995, and it allowed us for the first time to know who customers were and what they bought. You couldn't do it before that because computers weren't powerful enough, believe it or not. And it was only then that you had enough computer power to know these things. But it transformed what you could do as an organization, because for the first time you could target, you could tailor your marketing based on the things that customers were really interested in. And that's the key to successful marketing, is to connect on subjects that people are really interested in.
So for a company today, what would their data or big data strategy have to be in the retail sector? And do you think that still remains the cornerstone of any growth strategy?
I do. Actually, not just retail, any sector.
Any sector.
And you know, post Tesco, I'm involved in private equity, and I get to see a lot of businesses across a number of sectors. And the challenge, the opportunity is still the same. Businesses have more data now than ever before. It comes out of their operations. They can store it more cheaply. It comes out of their customer activities. But they struggle to use that data. And there's a huge opportunity there for all businesses if they can really break down their customers into individual people. And each person is different in what they need, in how they use the services, the products of the company. There's very different levels of profitability in different customers. And by managing that better, you can really transform your business performance, your business profitability. You can also transform your competitiveness, because if you understand the customer a little bit better than your competitor does, you can tailor and target your products and services more accurately to the needs of that customer. That just makes you a more appealing business to do business with, makes you more competitive. And that's without slashing your prices, slashing your margins.
Does that mean that the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, has overtaken the Chief Marketing Officer in today's company? Or how would the roles, or even the capital, human resources, which is also a key and strategic person, and removing finance, which is clearly always an integral part of the business. But how do you see roles changing within the company then?
I think it has changed the balance of power within an organization, a traditional organization. I think that the Chief Information Officer is more powerful, provided they can do the job well. There are a lot of people in those roles who are old style CIOs who want to use big programs, take forever. Those people are going to struggle. You need fast-moving CIOs who really know what data is for and where it needs to be placed within the organization, and really empowers the organization to use data rather than tries to control the organization through their position of being the gatekeeper of data and computing power. I think for the marketing executive, it's a second chance, but they need to take this second chance, or all companies will end up being run by accountants. And they now, with data, can be the most powerful voice in an organization, because they can bring the authentic voice of the customer into the organization, into the boardroom, into where the decisions are taken. And they can say, with more power than anybody else, this is what this business should be concentrating on, because these are the things that are important to our customers. So that really matters. And in a way, it means that customer measures, because they're real, they're quantifiable, they're up to date, begin to be as important as financial measures. And so in that way, the balance of an organization has changed. They have a different set of measures to navigate by.
Okay. And I suppose data plays an equally important role when you want to expand internationally the way that Tesco did. You pushed through significant expansion into Asia and Eastern Europe and also into the US. Tell me a little bit about how, what strategies worked best for international expansion?
Well, international expansion for a retail business is quite difficult. It's one of the last industries to become international, and it's still a very fragmented industry worldwide. Nothing like industries like aircraft manufacturing or the drinks industry or the tobacco industry. And the reason for that is tastes are very local. And so as a retailer, you've got to recognize that. And to be successful as an international retailer, you need to become the best local retailer in each of your markets. And you need to get to number one or number two in those markets by tailoring what you do to local tastes. And you can't be the same retailer all over the world. And we try to use data about customers. We would launch Club Card in every market in order to understand how tastes differ, and then we would tailor and change what we offered to the local market. So actually, if you went to Tesco stores all over the world, what was on sale was very different. Beneath the bonnet, there were some things that were more common that the customer didn't see. Our IT systems, how we replenished stores, some of our retail processes, how we held and used data, those were common around the group. But the products, the services offered to the customers, they were tailored locally.
And in how many countries did you?
13 countries.
13 countries, that's 13 different ways of doing things and of offering products and
and you know, in some of the countries even tailored again, so North China is different to South China and so on.
And so how did you keep such an expansion sustainable for one and also efficient? Because you could easily just rebuild an entire process and a whole operation in each place, and maybe that would end up adding.
Well, it is inefficient in that way. It's very capital intensive because you have to build store networks in all of these countries backed up by supply chains and so on. We had very few expat managers. 99.9% were local managers. That was efficient because they knew the local market. They could respond much more easily to local tastes. The efficiency in the system came from the common data and common IT systems that ran through the group. So we developed our IT in India, all of it, and then we had an operating platform for all of the stores around the group. And also there was a common set of processes by which we ran stores, how we managed people and so on. And that meant that there was a degree of efficiency in people, even though the products and services were different, people could operate those systems and switch from one country to another.
Okay. And this worked really well in Asia and Eastern Europe, but not so well in the US. Can you tell me why? What are the lessons behind that?
It's hard to say. I think timing was a big part of the challenge in the US. We opened in the fast-growing parts of the US, which were Arizona, Nevada, California. But we opened in 2007, the end of 2007, right at the time of the big housing bust in those very markets. So the huge population growth in Las Vegas suddenly went into population reverse. So where we opened new stores for the first time in new communities, the populations just disappeared. So I think that gave us a big challenge early on. Actually, the stores were hugely popular with customers. So we had the marketing positioning right, which was essentially convenience stores selling fresh food. That side of it was a big success. It was just the timing of the economy made it difficult.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would it be, now that the US economy is picking up, would now be the time to go back to have a second try in the US?
Well, Fresh and Easy is still there. Mm-hmm. I think it will do better now that the economy is returning. Sadly, Tesco, after I left, sold the business. Mm-hmm. But I think Fresh and Easy will be a success.
Okay. Well, you've talked about keeping processes similar, but also keeping the product mix in each country different and having management run locally. And with such a big enterprise, 13 countries and very big number of stores, how do you keep the culture, the Tesco culture, to remain the same in all countries you operate? And how do you communicate that?
I think the key, I mean, there are 500,000 employees in Tesco, is to empower people. You can't keep control through a command and control system or through a rule book. You have to have a relatively few higher level goals and values and some targets and some simple methods for keeping broad control. But actually you then have got to allow the people on the ground to respond to customers, respond to competitors, run the business. You know, you need them, you've got to trust them, and you've got to build their confidence so that they would act as you would act in any situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you could get store managers with a completely different idea of how to run the place that would go counter to Tesco's general guidelines. How do you ensure that you would have that? Was there a lot of training? Was there an induction program? Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the key is how you recruit, so that you recruit people who have the right value system. And that's self-recruiting, so people who can't identify with the purpose of the business and how it goes about business, and what kind of behaviors are important. Those people who can identify with that stay, those who can't leave. And then how you train people is really critical, and how you lead them. And so that combination of who you select, how you prepare them, how you lead them, means that people are more likely to approach things in a consistent way, and yet still bring their own personality, their own initiative to the job, which is important. And we had simple systems. We used a balanced scorecard very successfully in Tesco. We called it the steering wheel. And there were just a few universal measures that people could use to steer the business at all levels, in all parts of the organization.
Okay. What was in this steering wheel? What were the 5 elements that? Yeah,
we had one for customers, what we were trying to do for customers, what we were trying to do for the people who worked in the business, how we would organize our processes, how we would innovate in the way that we ran the business. Financial measures were important too, and also what contribution we would make to communities, sustainability, how we would conserve resources. So these were sort of 5 important segments that expressed what the business was trying to achieve and how it would go about that. And they were more balanced than the traditional narrow financial measures. Now within each of those segments there were simple targets, 4 or 5 in each.
That each individual
or each store or each department or each country could aim for, and then they could measure how they were doing against those targets.
Okay. You employ a lot of people for low skilled and low motivation jobs, stockists, cashiers, so on. How did you keep them interested? How did you keep them in their jobs? I imagine there's a high turnover rate as well in this industry. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, we discovered that universally people, not just in retail or not just in the UK, but in any job anywhere, people want just four things from a job. They want a job that's interesting to do. So if you can design work to make it more interesting, they have a little bit more involvement, it's satisfying to do, they can complete the work at the end of the day. New things happen. That's very motivating. The second thing that people want is to be treated with respect, just human decency, good manners, so that they look forward to going to work. They know they'll be at home there. They know that somebody, respects them for being there. This is really, really important. The third thing that people want is a chance to get on in life. So it's not just a job, but it's a career. And it may not even be for them, but they want to know the person working alongside them, they have a chance to get on. There's a social justice in the workplace. If you're good enough, you can get on. And the fourth thing that people want is a boss who's some help, not their biggest problem. We had to train thousands of our managers to teach them how to lead, to teach them how to be a boss who would work alongside somebody and not just find fault, but help them when they had problems, knew how to coach people, knew how to help work through the challenges that they had. So all of these things are hugely motivating if you can provide that interesting work, a good environment that's respectful, career opportunities, and good leadership in the organization. It makes a huge difference. Interesting thing is, pay and benefits, they do matter, but they don't matter nearly so much as those other things. Now, for Tesco, as you say, it was a low pay environment. You had to pay market rate for work. But what we did is, as the business was successful, we then shared the benefits of that success with our workforce, with very innovative share purchase schemes, fantastic pension benefits, top rates of pay within the sector, and a whole series of other things.
Okay. In fact, Tesco's last CEO rose from being a shelf stockist, I understand, to being the CEO in a 40-year process. Admittedly, the last few years have been difficult for Tesco. It's issued 2 profit warnings in the last 8 weeks, I believe, and its share price is at the 2003 levels. And so, what do you think went wrong in this process? There is a context, a price war context, I understand. What, in your view, could have been done differently, or that you would have done differently?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, I left Tesco in 2011, and it's true my successor ultimately wasn't successful in the role. I think the long recession was challenging, and he was unable in the end to come up with answers for those challenges. Now there's a new CEO at Tesco, Dave Lewis, and I'm confident actually he'll be able to find new responses to the environment that exists today. And that's the key. Businesses have to change and respond to changing environments, to changing consumer interests, to changing competition, changing technology. And each of these pose challenges for businesses, and it's how you think through those and the innovative answers that you come up with will determine whether the business can prosper over the long term.
What would you say to Mr. Lewis today, if you were to advise him on, he's in his 2nd week, I believe, in the job. So what would you recommend? What would be your first piece of advice for him?
I think concentrate on the customer, listen to the customer, listen to staff. So listen a lot. And you'll get first of all, you'll get encouraged because people will remind you why they shop in Tesco, why Tesco is important, but they'll also let you know how the business can be improved to be more relevant to their needs and their lives today.
Just a couple more questions on innovation and efficiency before we close. Tesco developed during your tenure, multiplied its formats, and that was part of the innovation, part of what drove Tesco's growth. But today, it could be part of Tesco's woes, its difficulties. It's less nimble, it's less, it has too many different forms. It's inefficient in that sense. Do you believe that's the case, or?
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. I think that the assets that Tesco have are the best assets in the market. And so the question is, how do you use those assets in today's environment for today's consumer? But the assets themselves are not a problem, they're a strength.
But how do you keep an operation efficient when there's so many different formats? You said earlier, data allows you to customize and know specifically what this individual customer wants. You still have to do general strategies, implement general strategies, otherwise it becomes too costly. How do you manage that? What's the right balance there?
I think it's how you build as you grow, which is important. And so Tesco has built on a single IT system, it's built on a single supply chain, it's built around a single customer database. So, you know, these are very strong core assets that allow you to enjoy the benefits of scale, but without incurring some of the diseconomies of scale. Now, it is true, it's always a trade-off by nature that a $100 billion business may not move as fast as a business that's just starting out, and that's why it's good news for the small businesses. They can grow and can compete, that's as it should be. But also, you've got to remember, when you're a big $100 billion business, you have assets, you have tens of millions of customers that other businesses would kill to acquire. You know, you have very powerful global supply chains. You've got lots of skill within your organization. So it's how you marshal these resources.
Okay, very well. Would you say anything, Peruvian CEOs today face a context of lower growth after years of very, very high or very fast GDP growth. And today they have to increase efficiency in their operations, they have to change the way they've been doing things. What would you say is the main objective that they should keep in mind? Or?
Well, I think it's a very exciting prospect in Peru. I mean, it's been a period of tremendous progress, and yet you can clearly see that there's much more that can be achieved in the years ahead. I would stay positive and not use the yardstick of before. Don't say 4% growth is no good because before we had 6%. 4% growth is still very, very good growth. It's growth. Yeah. And I think that you can innovate in lower growth environments. Remember that Tesco, in an industry growing at 2%, grew at 10% a year for 20 years. And you can innovate really by understanding that as the Peruvian economy develops, as the society develops, customers have new and different needs, new and different expectations. And those needs and expectations are business opportunities that you can go to market in a different way with different services and products and do very well by responding to these changes in society that's happening around your organization, and that will give you growth. If you've been spending a lot on the back of a fast-growing economy, now is a good time to rebase the business, to put more efficiency into the business. And if you can get that combination of doing new things based on, listening to how society has changed, whilst learning how to conserve resources and use less within the organization. That's a very powerful combination, because then as the economy picks up again, as you've readjusted your business, you're able to grow rapidly and profitably from a lower cost base, and you're better attuned to where the economy is going, because you've been listening, you've understood where society is going, and your products and services have been repositioned.
So it all goes back to listening to the customer.
Yeah, always, always. Whether you're the richest, most developed economy in the world, or whether you're just starting out, it's the same thing. There's a universal desire for a better life. People are concerned for themselves, for their families, for their friends, their communities. They're reacting all the time to new things that are happening, news, changes in society, the effects of technology, what does it mean for them, how do they want to spend their time and their money differently. All of that is business opportunity. And the key is, can you be the first business to spot those changes, and can you reorganize the assets in your business to respond first with new products and services?
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
That'll
you.
be all.
Pleased to speak with you.